Okay, welcome back. We are still talking about the accessory structures found within the integument. And right now I'm going to be talking about sudoriferous glands. These are your sweat glands. There are two types of sudoriferous glands. One is referred to as an eccrine sweat gland, and I'll talk about that in a moment. The other one is the apocrine gland. Both are very similar. And here is what they share in common. They are often referred to as merocrine glands because what happens here is they've got epithelial cells that are, once again, just like the hair follicle, protruding down into the dermis. And in fact, when it comes to the apocrine glands, these even protrude deeper, actually all the way to where the dermis and hypodermis meets. And so but all of these green cells that you see here are epithelial cells derived from the epidermis, this area out here, that have penetrated down within and growing within the either dermis or, as I say here, at the margin of the hypodermis and dermis. These cells, basically just a cell layer or two thick, are producing exocytotically. Now, you remember exocytosis. That's when there's a product produced within a cell, put into a vesicle. The vesicle then is transported out to the cell's membrane, the plasma membrane. It fuses with the plasma membrane and then dumps its materials outside of the cell. That's called exocytosis. And that's what's happening within the cells that are lining these little tubes that are made up of these epithelial cells, again, derived from epidermis. So imagine these little coils here. They're being formed by epithelial cells derived from the epidermis. All those cells are actively producing sweat exocytotically. So they're basically producing these vesicles within their cells that are surrounding a fluid. We're going to just generically refer to that as sweat right now. Those vesicles go to the surface, merge with the plasma membrane, and then dump their contents out into the lumen of these tubes. And so these tubes become filled with fluid, which eventually comes out at the surface here through this little pore. It's just the end of the tube. And then that fluid is spread out on the surface of the skin. Now, for eccrine glands, the substance that they're producing is it's pretty much water. It's very hypotonic fluid. It does have some salt in it, but not very much. It has a couple of peptides in it that are really important as antimicrobials. You can read about those a little bit more in your textbook. And other than that, its primary function is for thermoregulation. These eccrine glands, when they put this fluid out onto the surface of the skin, especially the palms of your hands, your soles of your feet, they do provide some antimicrobial protection, but mainly what they're doing is they're providing you a thermoregulatory method. As the water or that hypotonic fluid spreads out across your skin, it evaporates and thus cools the body in a steady kind of way. So those are the eccrine glands. Notice that they're here within the dermis, slightly smaller than these larger ones called apocrine glands. And the apocrine glands, really just a much larger eccrine gland, but notice that rather than emptying out at the surface of the skin, in fact, they empty out into a hair follicle. And this is interesting because really what's happening here is these are especially located in places such as the axilla or the armpit, where you're going to sweat a lot and produce a slightly different kind of sweat. The sweat that's produced by apocrine glands actually is thicker than the sweat that comes out of eccrine glands, and it is not hypotonic. In fact, it has a lot of proteins within it, a lot of different kind of excretions within that sweat, and it's actually poorly understood exactly what all those things are for. There is thought that there might be pheromones produced in that particular kind of sweat that comes from apocrine glands. And that is used by mammals, to attract one another or to scent, in some way create a scent that affects another's behavior. In any event, these apocrine glands are primarily located in places such as the armpit and are associated with hair follicles. And then again, the products are produced by exocytosis by these epithelial cells pushed into the lumen of this tube, which then eventually dumps into the hair follicle, and the sweat makes its way out, through the hair follicle. And yeah, so these are the two kinds of sudoriferous glands. Okay, so when we generically talk about sweat glands, we say they're sudoriferous glands, and then we say there are two kinds: the eccrine gland and the apocrine gland. And that's it for this section.